Islam is a religion of moderation. It is a religion that strives for balance between the physical and the spiritual, between this material world and the hereafter. Islam, therefore, opposes materialism or consumerism, where one's existence or happiness is heavily dependent upon the collection of material wealth such as gadgets, real estate, motor vehicles, and others. Having said that, Islam also opposes any form of total abandonment of worldly affairs. Islam aims that man achieves the best of both worlds. Allah Himself said in the Quran, "Our Lord, give us good in this world and give us good in the hereafter." Quran chapter 2 verse 210. This is probably one of the best supplications there is, as this encompasses everything that we could hope for in this life, such as wealth, well-being, and others. And much more. This also encompasses all the good things to come in the afterlife. The supplication is memorized by Muslims by heart and is mentioned during Muslim religious activities such as the Friday sermon or during the performance of circumambulation around the Kaaba in Mecca. That being said, let us focus on this world for a while and how we could make our lives here more worthwhile and sustainable. Let us leave the issues about spirituality and the discovery of God in our daily lives. Let's talk about business and how the Muslims are guided by the Islamic teachings on how to conduct one. Doing business, such as trading and selling products, or owning and managing a company that provides services, is the best way that a Muslim could find a living, especially when he is living as a minority in a non-Muslim country like the Philippines. Being self-employed meant that you have freedom with your time because Muslims perform prayers 5 times a day and spend a whole month every year fasting, and these are difficult if the Muslim is employed by a company which may not have religious tolerance or simply could not afford to have a Muslim employee be absent or half away during those times of worship. It is a sad truth that Muslims who are employed in companies often compromise their religion by not wearing the veil for women or not being able to pray on time. Being engaged in any business is generally allowed in Islam, especially if conditions are met by having halal products and halal business dealings. Now, you may be surprised to read the word halal in the business setting, especially when what you have known about halal is all about food. Well, halal is not limited to food that does not contain pork. Halal is an all-encompassing word that meant that such a thing, ideal, or practice is allowed for Muslims to be involved in. Technically, halal products and services are those that do not contain anything prohibited or directly result in any spiritual or physical harm to Muslims and non-Muslims who may avail of these products or services. Having halal merchandise, for example, meant that the Muslim may not sell religious images, liquor, cigarettes, drugs, pornography, and others in his store. He may otherwise sell anything that is not prohibited, such as food, clothing, etc. However, there are questions about merchandise that are generally neutral, but may be utilized negatively, such as firearms or some articles of clothing, especially women's and others. These articles may still be sold because their use shall be at the buyer's discretion and not the seller. Having halal services too is generally allowed, like construction, maintenance, and auto mechanic. These are all allowed. However, there will be issues if what you are constructing or will be working in, for example, is a bar for drinking liquor, casino for gambling, or a brothel for prostitution, or a church. All these are clearly to be avoided at all costs. Halal business dealings meant that it should be free from the prohibited types of business dealings. The first of this usury. The businessman may not only involve himself in borrowing money from a bank or anyone only to return it with interest. If he needed money for the expansion of his business, he may take an investor and give him equity of his company. Or he may borrow money from a brother in faith who may lend him money without interest. Trading is where many of these un-Islamic business practices aside from usury happen. The Arabic word gharar is a fairly broad concept that means deceit, risk, fraud, uncertainty, or hazard that might lead to destruction or loss. Scholars have defined gharar as something which its consequence is undetermined. Islamic trading is built upon honesty, transparency, and fairness to all parties concerned. Gharar occurs in all sorts of transactions where the merchandise in its quality and quantity, its price and others, are not determined and fixed in advance. Speculative activities in the capital market, stock exchange, derivatives instruments, and short-selling contracts are examples of gharar in modern finance. Common examples of gharar is from what Prophet Muhammad has forbidden on the purchase of the unborn animal in the mother's womb, the sale of the milk in the udder without measurement, and the purchase of the catch of a fisherman even before the determination of how much fish was caught. As you can see here, these are all uncertain. A person may have paid already and suddenly the animal's child was stillborn, or the cow suddenly does not produce milk, or the fisherman did not catch much fish that day. This is going to cause trouble to the buyer. Another prohibition in trading is the sale of something that is not in your possession, which is the common trend now among online sellers, especially on the pre-order basis, when they sell a product that is not theirs and they will only buy it to be sold to the buyer once the payment was made to them. Halal transactions are those which are done without usury or interest, such as those incurred in banks and pawnshops during lending, deposit, and others. Halal business also means that there is no uncertainty in business dealings or ambiguity that may give rise to problems later for those involved. Halal business practices are also good even for non-Muslims, since they would find it more humane than most hostile business practices done by usurers and bankers. Nowadays, rent-to-own plans are widespread in the purchase of cars, houses, and other commodities, and this is based on an Islamic financing scheme. Microfinancing, or lending money without interest to small business owners, has been proven successful, especially in poor countries, is also an Islamic financing scheme. Islam is an all-encompassing religion that seeks to protect the life, religion, property, intellect, and honor of the people, both Muslims and non-Muslims.